Hello, today we're going to talk about crisis management, especially focusing on the resident supervisor role. Managing a student in crisis is an extremely challenging task, but at the same time, it's very important. The strategies that follow are suitable for handling chronic and recurrent acting out episodes, as well as crisis management, so that you are not only well equipped to diffuse the crisis but can also help the student grow from the experience. Anger is a state of high emotional arousal. The angrier the student is, the less able he or she will be in dealing with the situation rationally, which means that at that moment, the student's logical thinking and other cognitive functions may be impaired. An enraged student may be immune to verbal interventions, such as advising or lecturing the student. We should intervene with him or her only at a point when we believe the student is receptive to hear any new messages. When handling a student in crisis, our primary intervention is to make sure that the student and others near him or her are safe. An initial intervention, we need to clear the area of people that do not need to be there, particularly other students. The fewer people intruding, the safer it will be. This may sometimes include resident advisors and also yourselves. The best person to intervene with a student in crisis is a person who already has established good rapport with the student. However, sometimes you may lay eyes on the student for the very first time during a crisis, and it's important that you know how to develop on the spot rapport. If you need to manage a crisis and you have no rapport or know little about the student, you can establish on the spot rapport by saying something positive to the student. For example, you can emphasize the student's strengths, or you can engage him or her in any casual conversation to keep the communication open. You can, you can value their uniqueness as an individual and comment on your certainty that he or she has the willingness and ability to get through the situation. During a crisis management, it is important that when you contact the admin that you let us know who it is and give us a general statement of what is happening. That way, we can pick the best admin that has the most rapport with the student or the admin that has the best knowledge about situations that are happening or occurring during that time. When we are handling a crisis, we are a problem manager. Our job is to guide the child out of the crisis. We do not need to provide a solution for the problem. In other words, we manage the crisis, but we do not need to solve the problem that created the crisis. This is very important because sometimes we are not able to solve the problem. Sometimes the problem is much bigger than us and it takes a whole lot more people to solve. And sometimes we're not sure that the problem ever gets solved. So it's important to know that we can't carry that and that we have to just manage the problem at that time. Avoid promising that you are going to fix the problem. Instead, offer your help by asking, "How can I help? What can I do to help?" We need to send the message to the student that we hear them and that we will deal with the current problem together. Sometimes saying nothing and simply listening to the student is the best approach. We can silently empathize with the student by nodding and with our facial expression and tone of voice. For example, we can use minimal encouragers like, go ahead, I'm listening, to motivate the student to tell us more. It's important during this time of asking questions that you also remain calm and you keep a steady voice. One way to remain calm during the crisis is to concentrate in asking questions. We can handle a whole crisis exclusively by asking questions without making comments, expressing our opinion, criticizing, or lecturing the student. It's very important that during this time that we are listening to the student and we're not trying to tell stories about what happened to us or we had a friend that tried to do this too. For instance, if a student is telling you that they want to commit suicide, they no longer want to be around, it is not the appropriate time to talk about how you had a family member commit suicide and that it really hurt your family or it left a huge impact that you all will never heal. Because at this time, the student needs to have complete and total focus on themselves, and they don't need to focus on you and what's going on with you. You need to be asking them the questions. Asking the right questions at the right moment can change practically anything. Ask short, direct questions that will help you clarify the problem. Use WH questions like who, what, where, when, and how. Avoid using why questions. Ask, ask your questions one at a time and give the student enough time to answer the question before asking the next one. During this time, it may seem as though you're not getting through to the student, or they may be, it may seem as though they're taking extremely long to answer and that they've shut down. Give them time. They're trying to think of the appropriate answer to give you, or they're thinking through what you've asked them. Ask questions in a non threatening way without concerning or accusing the student. Ask clarifying questions. For example, give me an example or give me more details. During this time, it's important to empathize with the student. Show concern and interest in what the student has to say. For example, say, I heard the other students, but I really want to understand what happened from your point of view. Tell me how this started. Also, it's important to define the objective. For example, I know you feel angry. What would help you feel better? What do you want? Show empathy. It is important to understand what happened from the student's perspective. Use a soothing response. Hear what he or she says, and then make an empathetic comment to the student's feelings. It's also important during this time that you remember that we're only focusing on one problem at a time. Students deal with a lot. And as you know, that when you're dealing with something, it feels as though a lot of things are happening all at once, and we need to focus in on one thing. Remember that the immediate goal is to guide the student out of the troubled state, not to solve the problem. Our understanding of the crisis will help decide which problem is of most immediate concern or is the one we need to deal with first. Quickly assess with what resources you can count on to manage the crisis and what obstacles you may face in the process. Again, target one problem at a time. If you feel uncomfortable at any time dealing with the crisis, remember that you have admin staff members that are here and are willing to deal with whatever it is that may occur. Use situation specific dialogue and behavior specific dialogue. Use temporary language. For example, when you feel better, or I know you feel angry now, to help the student see the crisis as short lived. Use coach dialogue and help the student articulate her or his ideas. Give positive directions, telling the student that she or he should do rather than what he or she should not do. For example, if you're trying to tell them strategies in order to ground themselves or in order to calm themselves, don't tell them that they should not be screaming at the top of their lungs inside of the building. Tell them that they should express themselves through art, or maybe they need to journal. Give them ideas on how to fix it and not things that they shouldn't be able to do. So, some possible crises that students may have are students going through emotional stress. This is the first time that they are on campus. And though COVID is And though COVID is something of the past now, it is something that has affected them. They are not used to walking on campus. They're not used to being away from their family. They get very homesick. Students considering suicide or cutting. This is one of those that is very dangerous and very important that you're aware of so that you can bring it to the admin attention. At this point, they need to intervene and they need to make sure that the student is safe. And it's important that they promise their safety on campus in order for them to stay with us. Students who are homesick. Sometimes this is their first time away from home. Other times, this is the first time they've been away from home in a couple of months, and their mom or their dad is sick and they're worried about them. Or they just started a new job and they can't hear from their family as often as they like, and they're stressed about it. Students may also be having problems at home with their family or their friends. Friends play an important part in this because they're not used to going days without hearing from them or not being able to see them, and sometimes they put that stress onto their friend. And also, students may be facing some type of abuse at home. Again, this is a time in which admin needs to intervene, and that way the appropriate protocols are taking place so that our students are safe. During a self harm or suicide intervention, it is important that you stay with the student. One time, a student had threatened self harm and they were in room restriction. The RS left the student to come and find an admin staff member. It is important that this not happen because things can happen in a blink of an eye. And it's important that you stay with that student. Just send us a message. Let us know what's happening. It's important that during this time that you stay calm, that you have the student promise their safety. Tell them that they're cared for and that they need to promise that they're going to stay safe while they're on campus. You need to get help from an admin staff member. Again, an admin staff member must deal with this situation. You need to keep talking to the student until the admin staff arrives, and then they may ask that you leave. You may never know what the outcome is, and that's something that you need to understand that the best outcome for the student happened. During this time, we also may take them to the clinic or the emergency room depending on the situation. Other forms of crisis may include bullying. Discuss the issue at hand and intervene with the students that it involves and report the issue. Bullying is something that we don't take lightly and we address face on. Another crisis is attention-seeking behavior. It may come off in the form of neediness, complaining, exaggerating, or arguing. I remember a time we were traveling with students. A student had a panic attack in a full bathroom. The bathroom was jam-packed. I cleared the bathroom out, and then the student instantly was fine. The student began talking about their weekend plans, and come to find out the student just wanted me to be aware of what was going on with their weekend and didn't want to tell me in front of everyone because she was worried about getting in trouble, and she basically was telling on herself so that we would tell her mom what was going on and her mom would stop what was happening that weekend. But she needed it to be dramatic. She needed it to be all attention on her. And then once it was cleared, everything was fine. There's also a romance side of things. Be aware of the situation. create boundaries, and make admin aware of the situation. So students are very much looking up to the resident advisors, the resident supervisors, and they enjoy your company. They like to be around you, and you're not very much older than them. It is very important that you keep those boundaries because students develop crushes, and though it's something that may make you feel uncomfortable, as long as you have that boundary set, things can proceed in a healthy manner. If at any point you feel as though a resident advisor or a resident supervisor is too close to a student, you need to discuss this with an admin staff member. In the past, we had a student who had a huge crush on the resident supervisor, and we brought it up to the resident supervisor that they needed to establish space and that they needed to establish boundaries. At any point, if you need help doing that, the admin are here for you, and we can give you guidance in how to establish boundaries with students in a healthy way. Again, if you have any questions or concerns, please reach out. We are here to help. Thank you.